Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about victim mentality. Now, you may have experienced challenges, difficulties, or even real hardships in your life, but it is so important not to let your history become the story of who you are and your potential. In this teaching, we're going to show you how to overcome a victim mindset so you can achieve your goals and be happy, healthy, and successful. Okay, David, so how would you define a victim mentality or victim mindset?
Well, this is something I discuss a lot with my clients because a lot of my clients come with this, either that they identified themselves, that they would call themselves a victim against the universe, against partners, against family, or they may not use the word a victim, but they think like a victim. So I think this is going to be a very interesting video because we'll be discussing how the inner child takes part in this. And we'll also be discussing the emotional pendulum here, how the inner child uses this victimhood to try and get its own way.
So you mentioned the idea of thinking like a victim. So what would be the typical signs or symptoms of someone thinking like a victim?
Well, one of the signs that you would see is a hierarchical belief system, and they would want to put other people above them or put them below them. They're very judgmental. They would definitely be using one or all three of what we call the three lies. I'm not good enough. This is a very typical victim mentality statement and an inner child statement. I can't cope. See, same thing. I'm unlovable or I'm unworthy, same thing. So if you're saying these things to yourself, even if you don't speak them out loud, then this video is for you to be able to do the golden thread, to delve down deeper and see what's at the core of this thinking, this mentality, this way of looking at the world, the filter you look through the world at.
And so, sorry, when you say golden thread, David, for our new listeners, what do you mean by that?
Well, the golden thread is a self-discovery technique that we've developed in our model over nearly 40 years now. And it starts with a premise, and this is very important for you to think about this and meditate on it. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim of them. So you see how at the beginning of the golden thread, that word victim comes into it. So think about what I'm saying. Every emotional experience that you experience in your body, you have created it as a result of what you see or what happens to you or what you witness or what somebody said or a situation. But the feeling, you are creating it. So let me be clear. You're not creating the situation, but you are creating your response. So you are the creator of your emotions. You cannot be the victim of an emotion that you create because you're the only one that's creating it. So once you really meditate on that and do that work for yourself, then you can start it as an emotional feeling. So if you want to call it scared, frightened, anxious, any word that you're describing an emotional feeling, I would prefer you to use the label red light. And why that's important is because it takes away this identity of the feeling. It's just calling it a feeling. I am now creating a red light feeling. Now the next question on the golden thread is why? And there's a self-inquiry. Why have I chosen to create this red light feeling? Then the next answer might be because of what they said. Then you do why again. Why would I create a red light feeling about what they said? And the answer might be, I didn't like what they said. Okay, why didn't you like what they say? And then you go down and you go down and you said once, I thought it was a great metaphor. It's like in the fairy stories when you're following a breadcrumb trail and you keep asking yourself, why, why? The trick here, the tip, is do not go back to the emotion. When you're doing the golden thread technique, ban the word I feel. This is so hard for many of my clients. Yesterday, I had a lovely lady. She could not, she said, I don't know what to say if I don't say I feel.
Yeah.
And I say, just replace it with I think, I choose, or I believe. Rather than say, I feel I don't like this, I think I don't like this, I believe I don't like it, I choose not to like it. And that's very important. Now, this lady, like yesterday, she said, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm so used to using that term. But that term, I feel overwhelmed, I feel disappointed, I feel betrayed, I feel jealous. It keeps you in the carousel. It keeps you locked in your feelings, and it doesn't get down to the core of the problem, which is what we're talking about today, the victimhood.
So, but I would imagine the manifestation of a kind of victim mentality, victim way of thinking, victim way of believing, is the red light feelings of fear, hopelessness, frustration, anxiety, anger, all manner of red light emotions. Below that, when you ask that why question, as you said, we might get to, this is going to be a disaster. They're not going to love me. They don't love me enough. Oh, look, this has happened again. All these kind of, victim statements within our self-talk. But below those are those lies that you referred to, which is, I believe I'm unlovable. I believe I'm not good enough. I believe I'm not going to be able to cope with this. Would you say that it's those three lies that are right at the very root foundation of a victim mentality?
Well, that's a good question, Alex. I don't think they're the very root, but I think they're very close to the root.
Close to the root.
Very close to the root. And so why that's so difficult, as you just explained, and it sounds like a very simple word, but it's the familiarity. You're so familiar. And a lot of my clients kind of balk at this, but in a perverse way, the familiarity offers you some kind of a comfort, or you believe it's easier. So that familiarity of thinking that way, and the example that you used, if you keep on using those, I feel a victim, I feel victimized, I feel like, then all you're doing is you're keeping yourself on the surface level, and you're just going round and round on what we call the carousel. And really what we're trying to teach you, so you can do this for yourself, is to have the skill to dig down into your beliefs. And that's why how I opened this teaching is so important. You are the creator of your emotions. Not that emotions are wrong, not that you shouldn't create them, not that you should be emotionless. I'm not saying that. I've never said that. Emotions are wonderful. Emotions are maybe your best strength, but you create them. And once you understand that, how can you be a victim of emotions that only you create? So when you get that past that barrier, which I'm not underestimating, this will take all your determination, all your skill to get through that barrier. Because if you've been thinking the other way for all of your life, this is very familiar. It will seem extremely uncomfortable to say, no, I create that feeling. Why am I creating the feeling? And then that takes you down deeper and deeper. And to me, when I'm working with a client, it's like we're going down deep, I don't know, into a cave, into a dark cave or something. And this steps down into this dark cave is what you've been trying to avoid all of your life, because you're very worried what you're going to find down there. And maybe it's worse than what you're dealing with up here. But actually, all we'll find is the inner child, scared, frightened, locked in this dark, deep dungeon. And we have to go and find the child and teach the child to bring the child out together.
So, David, I'm wondering whether, because there is some of us, many of us, have been actual victims.
Yes.
And so, of circumstances in our childhood or in later years.
Definitely.
So does our victim mentality, this way of thinking, this kind of negative way of thinking, very black and white thinking, where we're saying things like, this is never going to happen, or this is hopeless, or, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. Is there like one singular point in time that makes almost that we choose to create this victim mindset and mentality? Or does it kind of build up over a number of years? What have you found in your experience with clients?
I found both of those, really. There can be a moment in your childhood when you sat at the end of your bed and you said, it must be me, what I call the vow, the VOW. I'm to blame here. There's something wrong with me. Whatever statement that you make, and that could be the beginning. And you may well remember that. Or it could be, as you just said, Alex, a combination of events in a dysfunctional family with dysfunctional parents or poor teachers or very poor group of friends. And then it's something that's developed as a kind of a way through it, a way to live, a way to survive, if you like. And some of my clients will definitely say that. I had to become a victim. I had to go into myself. I had to hide in a corner. I had to make myself, this same lady I'm talking about yesterday, this is what she said. I had to make myself invisible. Do you ever think this? I couldn't produce myself, because if I produced myself, my father would criticize me heavily, show me up verbally and physically, hit me, and I can't go into the details, but you can imagine, very aggressive childhood. So how she learned to deal with it was to make herself less, and make herself invisible, to get through that situation. And so she started to believe that she was a victim. But I see her as victorious. And this is what I said to her. You did an amazing job to get through that situation of abuse, whether it's sexual, whether it's emotional, whether it's verbal, whether it's physical. But you found a way to get through that. And I'm really so proud of you. Done a wonderful job. So all we're talking about is you never updated that belief, and you're still operating from that childlike belief of being a victim, keeping yourself small, being invisible, thinking that you don't matter, putting other people above you, putting your partners above you, thinking that their needs are more important than yours, trying to please them, trying to people please the world, trying very worried about what other people think about you, not wanting to be criticized. So you see, these are very typical responses when you view the world through that childlike vision of being a victim and being invisible.
I think David, that's quite a profound point you've made there, because it's not just actually being a victim of our circumstances at the time we faced the difficulty, the challenge. We're then, because at that time when we were younger, we made the choice to use being a victim or holding on to this victim mentality as a survival strategy.
Yes.
And would you say that most adults today who have this victim mentality is because they are operating in this kind of survival strategy mode?
So this is what I said at the beginning of the teaching. This is where it gets very interesting. So the direct answer to your question is yes. Most of the people, like my lady yesterday, they've been running this way of thinking, of being, and she would call it natural. She did call it, this is my nature. This is who I am. I say, no, this is not who you are. This is a device that you developed successfully to get you through a situation. But now the situation has changed. It's been changed for many years, but you're still holding on to that inner child story. So you're right, it can be that way. Or, and here's the pendulum I talk about, or it can be that you now develop and use this victimhood, this victim mentality. I like how somebody's written in, and the question is very good, victim mentality. This victim mentality can also be used, and you're not going to like this, but I'm going to tell you what I find, as a manipulation. How does this work, David? Well, this works because the person thinks that if other people think that I'm somehow weak, they'll feel sorry for me. I call it the poor me. They'll feel sorry for me. They'll be a little bit easier. They'll cut me a little bit of slack. They won't be so critical. They won't be so judgmental. They won't compare me. They'll just be a little bit easy with me. They've seen me as very hypersensitive. And so what they do, they use it as a manipulation. And so this is why it's such an interesting story, because you can swing from one side of the pendulum to the other, like in a blink of an eye. And you can almost want to make yourself a victim to get somebody else to change their mind. Isn't this a horrible subject to talk about? But this is exactly what I see with my clients. It's very hard for them to kind of own this, be accountable for this. Because once they're accountable, that's what I would call the enlightenment. That's owning it. Now you can carry on doing it. This is what I say to my clients. Please carry on doing it. I'm not going to try and stop you. But do you think that is the best way? Do you believe that's in your flow? Do you believe that is going to make you flourish? Do you believe that's going to make you reach your potential? And of course, the answer is no. But they're so tied in with their story, Alex.
And I think it's interesting, both of those examples you gave, both sides of the pendulum, they are, playing small or attention seeking, wanting people to cut you slack, wanting people to feel sorry for you. So kind of almost reaching out for validation and hiding away from it somehow. But both of those are the inner child survival strategy.
Absolutely.
From a place where both individuals there could have been actual victims in their own right at some point in time, but now they're playing out this story, which, as you said, is now severely limiting their potential, making them, blocking their energy, keeping them out of their flow. And it also affects their law of attraction.
It definitely affects their law of attraction, because the energy that they're portraying out to the universe is of this victim or manipulation. And then what happens is they attract people into their lives that respond to that kind of behavior and thinking and way of being. And so my lady yesterday was saying things like, well, I just want to be recognized. I just want somebody to give me validation. I just want somebody to give me reassurance. I just want somebody to pass worth on to me, to tell me that I'm worthy. And this is the answer to your question. Are the three lies the base of it? I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I'm unlovable, or I'm unworthy. No, the base of it is about your value. And this is what we spent nearly all of we had an hour and a half session. And this is what we spent the majority of the session. What is value? Where do you get value from? I believe you're a spiritual being that I call Shen, and your value is something that's intrinsic to you. It's not in question. It cannot be taken away from you, and it cannot be given to you. And I often use this little jokey thing, but it's really serious. When you were born, or when any child is born, the midwife doesn't hold you up to the window and say, quick, can somebody give this baby some value? And that baby is you. And you have value. You have to have value, because the value is who you are. And you are part of this universe. You are as valuable no more valuable, but definitely no less valuable than anyone else. So when I can share that teaching with you, then looking outside of yourself for a value is nonsensical. How can somebody who's equal to you in value give you value? It's not a commodity. It's not a bank account that somebody tops up with deposits of value and withdraws them, and you are the victim of that. Can you see how this is at the core of it? And this victim statement is what the inner child down deep in that dark cave is struggling with. Because this is why it's an inner child teaching. Because when we're children, quite rightly, because we haven't developed our cognitive reasoning, quite rightly, we do believe that value is something that is a commodity. We do believe that our parents give us value, give us worth. We are looking for our parents to be proud of us, to be happy when we do well, to stroke us, to be there for us when we don't do well. And so when we have a childhood and we experience parental guidance when they are highly critical, when they find it difficult to show or express love, or when they're at the other end and they're actually cruel and they are abusive and they are dysfunctional, for the inner child, the story, the dream of getting this top up of value doesn't come. And so the inner child does what a child would do. It can't blame the people, can it? It can't blame parents, teachers, friends, siblings. And so it turns it onto themselves and it says, there must be something wrong with me. I have no value. Value has to be given to me. People have to acknowledge, people have to tell me. I have to be, and it's a little bit like a drug that you need. The example that this lady used, I've never heard it before. She said, it's like a delicate plant. This is a lovely example. It's like a delicate plant growing, but I need somebody else to water it and nurture it.
Yeah.
It's not down to me. I need somebody else to do it. And this plant has been so restricted over time, it's nearly dying now. She said, my plant is nearly dying and I just want someone else to come in and to care for it and to nurture it and to make it grow. But the problem is then, she is this nearly dying plant, a victim, and she's looking outside of herself. And she's manipulating all other people. Well, if I'm good to them, if I look after them, if I please them, if I don't upset them, perhaps they'll come and nurture my plant. And I said to her, I'm going to steal that because I think that's a really good metaphor. But that metaphor is not the reality of who you are as a divine, beautiful, spiritual, unique human being that's part of the universe. We do not depend on someone else. We are not codependent. We are self-sufficient. And rather than seeing yourself as a victim, I want you to use another V word, victorious. You have been victorious. Well done for using a strategy that got you through a difficult childhood. I think it's now time to update that strategy and come more into your flow and come more into your balance.
And I can also see, David, using that analogy of the plant and nurturing the plant, that really, when we hold the beliefs of being unlovable, not good enough, that self-doubt, which you say is at the root really of the victim mentality, it's like we are artificially throttling the kind of flow of nourishment and energy from the universe that would sustain us. So, we're not taking self-responsibility for nourishing ourselves. In fact, we're doing quite the opposite. We're kind of like drying out the soil super quick because of this victim mindset, because of this self-doubt, because of this lack of self-love, that we don't deserve it unless someone gives it to us.
And that's right, Alex. And so it's a very fundamental misunderstanding in the core belief. And using this lady's analogy, this metaphor. She's looking for someone else to provide the sunshine, to provide the water, to provide the nourishment, where she lives in a universe where this is all around. So instead of looking and being part of the universe, she's restricting herself down a very narrow vision that she is codependent. She's already accepted that. She said to me, this plant is nearly dead. It's been dying for 50 years. It's nearly dead now. I'm just looking for someone, I call it like a fairy godmother, to come floating in, whisk me up, look after me, do everything right. And I said to her, do you really believe there's a person out there that does that? And you know what she did? She smiled and she said, of course not. So for 50 years, she's been trying to get someone to do something that she knows can't be done. And the only one that can do it is ourselves. And again, you're down at the basis of the Wu Wei Wisdom teaching principles. We have to be self-sufficient. That doesn't mean to say we're isolated. That doesn't say we cut ourselves off from everybody. That's the opposite. If we're self-sufficient, we can bring everybody into our energy field, but we do not depend on them for our actual being, for our spirituality, for who we are. We depend on ourselves. We make sure that our belief system is true. And I often say it, what do you believe? Why do you believe that? And that's the golden thread, to go deeper, go past the emotions. So many of my clients come to me because they base their life on their emotional feelings. But if you believe that you are the creator of your emotional feelings, it's like, I don't know, like a block of flats. The ground floor is the emotion, but the basement are your beliefs that create the emotion. So if you just base it on the ground floor, you're missing all of these beliefs. And most of our beliefs have been formed in our childhood. And here's something else. Most of our beliefs aren't even our beliefs. They're what we've inherited as a child, how we reacted, what people told us. So now you're a mature, wonderful, spiritual human being. Surely you can just recap, go over those beliefs, and make sure you want them to form your life journey, to form your flow, to be in your natural path, to represent who you are, to be your identity. And as Alex said at the beginning, this is so important. This is why I do this work, to be honest. Your childhood is not your identity. It is a chapter in your book. It cannot define you unless you want it to. And that's a question only you can answer. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not saying it wasn't immensely painful, uncomfortable, unfair, unjust. I'm agreeing with you. It was. But you've come through it. Let's update the belief system now to embrace the new world, the real world, reality. Let's look at all the gifts you've got. Let's look at your determination and your skill. Let's look at your Shen spirituality. Let's see how creative you are. Let's use your sensitivity correctly, properly, not to manipulate other people to be soft with you. Let's stand up tall. Let's live your life on who you really are, because I believe you're amazing. I believe you're awesome. Why don't you? And that's the question.
Brilliant. Thank you, David. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this teaching and it's given you some insight. We have several other teachings that will be really, really helpful for you on this subject. So we have teachings on how to believe in yourself, and also lots of teachings on love and self-love, which are kind of integral to the stuff we talked about today. If you have enjoyed this teaching, please do let us know, and also maybe share it with someone else who you think would also benefit. David works every week by Zoom video call with clients all over the world. on these sorts of issues. And if you are interested in learning more about David's one-to-one consultations, I will also put a link to those in the show notes. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.